Well, the group stage of the Australian Championship is officially over. We've had 6 rounds to get used to Australia's new second tier competition. I think it's a perfect opportunity to sit down and have a frank discussion about whether this competition has been any good and whether it should be a permanent feature of the football calendar in the years to come. I'm going off the cuff. I've got a few dot points, and I'm just going to have a quick chat about my thoughts on the Australian Championship. I think I'll start with the quality of the football that we've had on the pitch. And from the games I've seen, I haven't watched all of those games, but I think the quality has been pretty good. You know, you got to remember this is a bunch of NPL teams playing all the other teams from the other state leagues. So it's not like it's the level of the A-League. But I still think the quality is actually been pretty good. I think it's actually raised the quality of all these NPL clubs because they're going up against different opposition. They're going up potentially harder opposition. I think all around the quality of the comp has actually been really good. My star player, my pick of the tournament so far, and it's probably a bit of a cop-out, pretty easy one to talk about, is inaugural from Sydney Olympic. He scored 6 goals in 6 games, so he scored in every single round of the competition, only played to do that, and he's the leading goal scorer heading into the knockout phase, so he might be pipped by another team in the knockouts, but I've been really impressed with him, and having a competition like this puts a lot of players like that on the radar for A-League clubs. My team, the Wanderers, I'd love to get a player like that because he knows how to score goals, and frankly, none of our players have shown they can't score goals right now. So yeah, I think the qualities of football has been really good to see. There's no doubt about it. In terms of crowds, everyone loves talking about crowds in the A-League. We had a total attendance of 73,047 from 48 games, and that's an average of 1,522. And that's probably a bit below what I would have hoped for. I spoke on the A-League crowds account, the account I run on Twitter. I was hoping for an average of 2,000. Who knows, maybe we'll get that by the end of the knockout stage, although we'd have to get some pretty big, consistent crowds from the quarterfinals, semis, and the final. But I think that's a slightly less than what I would have hoped for. Our biggest crowd is still the 6,825 for the opening game of the comp between South and Sydney Olympic at Lakeside. All around, the top 4 teams that averaged the best were, well, for me, no surprises. It was South Melbourne, Preston Lions, IPL Leichhardt and Wollongong. And those are the 4 clubs I personally believe are probably in any serious conversation of actually getting a spot into the A-League if the A-League ever wished to expand from taking teams from the NPL. I think they're the best ones that have performed well in terms of the crowd department and probably have a bit of money behind them that they could probably get to the A-League, but they'll probably have to get a bit more of that A-League money to be a good permanent feature of that competition. But around, those 4 teams performed the best. And like I said, I think they'll be the ones that have the potential to go to the A-League. I also thought, I really want to talk about South Hobart as well. They average about 1,000, which, isn't, what Preston or South would have hoped for. But for South Hobart, a small little club playing out of a small venue, Darcy Street, down in Hobart, I think that was an incredible turnout for them because I think they're probably the least resourced club in the entire Australian Championship in terms of finances and quality of players. I think just the reality that Tasmanian NPL is probably of the least quality of all the NPLs that are featured in the Australian Championship. Fantastic from them to put in a good show. They even got a point in the final round of the competition. They hadn't won a game. They hadn't even drawn a game. And to get it against Heidelberg, a very good team. I know they already qualified for the quarterfinals, but, they were an Australian Cup finalists, and for South to get a result against them, South Hobart, I think that's awesome. One club that I think performed extraordinarily poorly in terms of crowds, and even on the field, was Sydney United. This was a team that I expected to really be pushing for a quarterfinal spot, but they were knocked out, I think, with 2 rounds to go. They got humbled by Bayswater City. Northeastern Metro Stars beat them as well. And in terms of crowds, average 581. I think that's the worst of any of the Australian Championship clubs. And this is a club that was one of the 8 foundation clubs. I could probably, don't know if I probably should, but I could probably go into depth about why Sydney United performed so poorly, at least in terms off the field with their supporter base. I think you just have to put it into Google to know, if you don't know, what's going on at Sydney United and kind of the culture that's always been there at Sydney United, and a lot of these Croatian clubs that have been founded by people that were from Croatia, quite involved in some of the stuff that was going on in World War II. And they're very kind of stuck in their ways. They're not willing to change and evolve with the times, which I think a lot of our multicultural clubs are very good at doing. Some people might not agree, but I actually think they're pretty good. Clubs like Marconi and IPR and South Melbourne. But I don't think Sydney United have really changed, and I don't think they're a particularly attractive club to take the family out to. I know there was a lot of riot police going to the games as well, but I don't buy that as a reason for why people aren't going to Sydney United games. I just don't think they're an appealing club to go to, and they need to change that because, frankly, I don't think they deserve to be a foundation member of the Australian Championship. Moving on from the crowd chat, TV, I think it was great to see the competition on SBS, the traditional broadcasters of football in Australia. We haven't really got, though, any data around how many people are watching the games, which I think is important to know because despite a lot of chat about crowds, where you get the big bucks from is from TV deals. If not many people are watching it, there's no real incentive for any other kind of network to put the big money towards getting the Australian Championship. It was great to have the competition free on YouTube or on SBS, but the reality is I don't think there's a demand to put it behind a paywall or even just a little bit of it behind a paywall. And some people will say, yeah, that's great that it's free to air. And I think that's awesome. I think it's super accessible, which I think is good for this competition at the Sun. It needs to be super accessible. However, I think if you put a paywall behind it, I think it'll be way more detrimental. And I think moving forward as a product, it has to be attractive that you want people to pay for to watch on TV. So yeah, it was great that all the games were free. Moving forward though, long-term vision, I think it needs some elements to be behind a paywall. Not all 8 games, maybe half of them, some of the big games to have an incentive, because moving forward, you need a competition that can generate revenue through TV audience. Don't think it's there yet. Positives, I think it's awesome. I think this has been a really good addition to the football calendar. One reason why? More football. It's great watching the A-League, but having the Australian Championship on at the same time has been awesome. I think they've put the times for the games. I think they've actually been quite reasonable, trying not to clash with the A-League. On Saturday games are at 1 and 3, and on Sunday they're at 1 and 4:30. And about 7:30 on the Friday night. In fact, the Friday night games, I think our top 3 biggest pulling crowds have been on the Friday night. So I think that's where the real big crowds and big attention are on the Friday night games. Maybe that's where next year they have to look putting more games on the Friday night, big marquee games on the Friday night. But it's been great just to have more football on in general. And in terms of just me as a viewer watching more games, I think it's great for the players because, like I said with Ali Agwal, how he might get an A-League signing out of this, it means more footballers are being exposed at a high level. And I think that's important to develop more players, is get them playing at a high level, get them playing against different state league clubs, getting them on planes, getting them to play teams they've never played before, raising the level of football. I think that is just a win for the sport. That is a win for all these players who are some of them probably craving something a bit more than just the state league competition. Pro-Rel. Well, we never had any commitment towards promotion and relegation from this competition. I think long term we have to have a proper conversation about what is this competition, how does it connect to the A-League, and what are we going to do moving forward. But right now, I think we've seen that I just don't think we're ready for promotion and relegation. When will we be ready? It could be 10 years, it could be more. But just from what we've seen, I think there are a small handful of clubs that could have the potential to join the A-League. But there's not like there's 12 or 14 where we could be like, hey, let's set up a second division and promote between the 2 comps. Like I said, I think Preston, South, maybe Leichhardt, Wollongong are probably the only ones, maybe Marconi, we could have a serious conversation about joining the A-League. And so I don't think we're ready for promotion and relegation, a proper national second tier where the winner, the grand final winner or whatever, can be promoted into the A League or get into even to just a relegation playoff. We aren't there. Who knows how far we're off? You know, we need to keep building this competition. I remember for years before we had the second division, people would say, oh, you know, we're 10 years off before Pro Rel. No, I think we're probably 10 years off Pro Rel after the start of this second division. So hopefully this continue to grow. I think what it needs is more investment, more quality coming from it. But wait, we'll just see. But yeah, I think that's. I'm sticking to my notes. If I don't stick to my notes, I'll ramble, and I'll waste all your time, and I'll go way over for what this video should be. But yeah, I think it's the comp's here to stay. Hopefully, I know there was rumours that it was only going to last for 2 years, but hopefully it'll stay. I think it's been a great addition. Like I said, I think there's more growth need to be done by some fan clubs. I'm looking at you, Sydney United. I think there's needs to be more interest as well from the group stage. One thing I didn't mention is that the first 2-3 weeks did really well in terms of attendances, but it's dropped off quite a lot in the second half of the group stage. And I think we need to keep that interest going because we can't have a sustained full home and away national second tier when fans are already dropping off after week 4. So that needs more work there. But yeah, it's been great. I got to a couple of games. Wish I could have got to more, but you know, when you live 2.5 hours from Sydney, what can you do? Anyway, that's my wrap on the Australian Championship. Yeah, big thanks for watching this video. If you've watched it this far, give us a like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Great video coming out soonish. Hopefully soon, hopefully by the end of the week. We're looking at Newcastle Jets' old owner, Nathan Tinkler, and his turbulent time as the owner of that club. So keep notifications turned on for that video.